Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of What's Going On. I'm your host Tom D'Ambra, and as always we are very thankful that you take your time from your busy day to spend an hour with us. We have received a lot of comments with particularly to the show. This is actually our 26th show, and some of the comments that were made was they found the information fascinating. They very much appreciated our format, the formats that we've been using. If this is your first time watching the show, we have been using items that are written down in history with regards to sources like the Congressional Record and places like this, legislation. We've been reading a lot of legislation, verbatim. And also we've been getting quotes from people of the particular time of whatever subject we've been speaking of. If you've been watching the show, you know that what we have been really getting into in quite depth is our money system, or the lack of. As we have demonstrated to you over and over again, the people who control our money system, you know it as the Federal Reserve, is a private foreign banking corporation. It's actually a cartel. If you go on the internet at www.katv.org, all our shows are on there, and you can go back to show 1 where we get into the definitions of cartels and we get into the players who orchestrated, who were the liaisons between the international banking entities that put this act together, which was passed on December 23rd, 1913, while the Congress was away for the Christmas holiday. We've also gotten into quite extensively what we have for a medium of exchange. I will not use the word money because, as we've demonstrated through the coinage acts of our own country and through different law dictionaries, particularly Black's Law Dictionary 4th edition, we have demonstrated to you that we do not have money as money is in a legal sense, because money does not prescribe to debt or notes or instruments of debt. And as we've demonstrated to you through the coinage acts of the founding era of this country, our money was based on intrinsic value in species of gold and silver. If you remember, we get into the different coinage acts, and we talked about how a dollar is literally 25.8 grains of gold with a 15-to-1 ratio of silver. We then went forward into the quotes of the day, all the warnings, the dire warnings, if you would, of people like Jefferson and Lawrence T. McFadden and others who tried to warn the American people about the importance of controlling your own money system. And we've brought it to modern day political heads also, people like Jim Traficant, Ron Paul, and others who have warned the American people. I think Ron Paul summed it up the best, where he said in one of the Republican debates that if the American people are going to gain control of their destiny, they must gain control of their money system first. Now, I know the average American thinks that the Federal Reserve is part of the federal government. And we use the example of, go ahead and look it up on the phone book, and you're going to see it listed right next to Federal Express, which is a private entity. So the name Federal Reserve was, as we demonstrated, was put in by a gentleman by the name of Paul Warburg. He was one of the banking elites out of Germany who coincided with the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, J.P. Morgan entities, and others. And they used this name deceitfully because they wanted the American people to mistakenly believe that, number one, this banking cartel was part of the federal government, and number two, if you remember, we read their 6 agendas from Jekyll Island, Georgia, when they all met, what they wanted to do, how they wanted to orchestrate this, how they were going to fool the American people. But they knew from the very beginning that they were going to confiscate all the intrinsic value of your currency. In other words, they were going to confiscate all the gold and silver of the United States people, of the American people, with deception. Because if you've watched the show, we've gone over a lot of times about the Hegelian dialectic of problem, reaction, solution. And basically what they do is they create different crises to get a reaction from you. And then they always provide the solution, but the solution always takes away your liberties, and it always strengthens their authority and their purse strings also. And I will give you examples of the war on drinking, on alcohol, prohibition. Okay, the federal government, as we have demonstrated, is only supposed to be involved in three things, folks: Treasury, defense, and judicial. And only in the areas of districts, enclaves, and territories, not in the states that make up the union. All right. So what they did was they created a broad crisis, the war on drinking, and they put in federal law. So they got the reaction from the people they desired, and they put in federal laws to outlaw the consumption of alcohol. And what took place was this: because now they had this federal jurisdiction, well, if they have this federal jurisdiction with these new federal laws, they had to have an enforcing power. And the enforcing power, as we know, was the ATF, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. So we go through this period of 14 years of no drinking alcohol. And what happened after the 14 years was up and prohibition was null and void? Did they reinstate? Did they take away the ATF with regards to, okay, we don't have this crisis anymore, we don't have this jurisdiction anymore? Why did they keep the ATF? Because the prohibition was a stepping stone for the federal government to put its judicial claw and grip, if you would, over the sovereign 50 states that make up the union. And they've done this on multiple crises. What they do, folks, is it's just like when we got into the global warming facade. These people who are getting all these different fundings from different government agencies, they actually are telling these scientists, okay, here's the conclusions we want. You use whatever methods you need to get to these conclusions, but these are the conclusions that we want you to contrive with our money. So the science, obviously, is phony. And with the information that we have provided to you and demonstrated with people that are much beyond my education with regards to meteorology and climatology and so forth, that it is obviously a facade. But what's coming out of this facade? All right? I can tell you what's going to come out of this facade, folks, because you study these people and you can just read their methods because they've done this so many times. And what it is this. They're going to start eventually with the cap and trade, and look this up on the internet, cap and trade, they're going to start charging you for carbon credits, okay? Now you may say, what is a carbon credit? A carbon credit is you're going to have to pay X amount of money, whether it be for the product, and let's go with a gallon of milk, okay? That gallon of milk has to go through a process through the cow. The cow exhales carbon dioxide, a very natural process, by the way. Okay? And the carbon dioxide, the farmer is going to have to pay for carbon credits per year for every head of cow, every head that he has, in his barn to provide the milk to you. So then the milk has to go through a process, and then the milk has to get transported. Well, all these different entities create what? Carbon dioxide. Okay? So they're going to charge you carbon credits. When you go to buy that gallon of milk, at the end of it all, you're going to be paying through a long process of carbon credits along the process of from the cow to your glass. You're going to be paying carbon credits by the purchase of that gallon of milk. You're going to buy a gallon of gasoline. You're going to pay for carbon credits. And the distributor of that gasoline is going to have to pay carbon credits to the World Bank. Literally, when you get to the top of the pyramid where this money is going to wind up, it's going to be the World Bank. And folks, the World Bank are the same people who just got $28 trillion that we know of. Okay, that figure of 28 trillion with a T dollars is literally about 2.5 months old now. We don't know the actual figure anymore. I remember when we started this show, it was in the 2.3 trillion window, then the 4 trillion window, then the 7 trillion window, then up to the 14.7 trillion window, then it went up to the 24.3 at one time, I believe it was, and the last figure that was released to the American people was $28 trillion. Now, I want you to think about this, and we've demonstrated this, the mechanics of our money system, and this is what it is. Our Department of Treasury, which is an insolvent corporation, as we have demonstrated, requests permission from the private bank that you know is the Federal Reserve to print our own money, okay? And so the Federal Reserve just makes an entry on a ledger, gives us permission to print our own money. We print the money, and then we go into debt with an interest bond on every dollar we print to these people who gave us permission to print our own money. And we've demonstrated this. This is how the mechanics of our money system works today. All right? So think of this, folks. They're going to get $28 trillion. And me, I can't fathom that number, okay, with regards to wealth. But I know what it does mean to me is that generations and generations ahead of me are going to be laboring for that $28 trillion. But I want you to take that a step farther, and I want you to think about this. When, in fact, they gave us permission to print the $28 trillion that we gave to them, right? Now, we owe them on the interest due from getting permission from them to print the $28 trillion that we gave them in the first place. You got to understand that. So are they laughing all the way to the bank, as the saying goes? Absolutely. I would be. I'd be a very happy person if someone wrote a check to me for $28 trillion and something that I just gave them permission out of thin air to go ahead and write, and then it held value, and then they had to pay me an interest because I gave them permission to write the check in the first place. Ludicrous. This is exactly where we are in this country. And this is absolutely ludicrous, and this is why Ron Paul and others made the statement that if the American people are to gain control of their nation, they must gain control of their money system first. We do not have control of our money system. Article 1, Section 8 of the organic de jure United States Constitution regulated that power and responsibility to the Congress of the United States. Now, with keeping that in mind, you remember we went over all the language on the dollar bill, why there was two signatures, one was the creditor, one was the debtor, and so forth. This is the base, folks, of our problem. It's like Baron Rothschild said. Give me control of a nation's currency, and I care not who makes its laws. Why would he make such a statement like that? Because, folks, if I'm controlling your purse strings, I'm controlling every aspect of your life. And you can't think of one that I'm not. I'm going to control how you eat, what you eat. I'm going to control your traveling, the clothes on your back, the roof over your head. I'm going to control every aspect of it. And this is why Jefferson made the warning to the American people, which he did numerous times, and other people of the founding era of the country, was that he considered the issuance of the currency more detrimental to the liberties of the people than standing armies themselves. So this is why, folks, this is the front issue of today. But of course, that front issue of today is kept off the front page. Why? Because the very people who control the issuance of our currency control the media. Their agents control the education system. Their agents control everything that you read, unless you're going and making the effort to go outside of normal sources, what we call the mainstream media. It's everywhere. Excuse me. If I was going to recommend a book to you to read, it would be G. Edward Griffin's would be the author, and the name of the book is The Creature from Jekyll Island. Of course, Jekyll Island, Georgia, being the place where the powers to be, through the liaison efforts of Senator Aldridge of Rhode Island, met to put the Federal Reserve Act together of 1913. And we've gotten into this at quite length on previous shows. But we also demonstrated to you, excuse me, how they created different panics leading up to that point, particularly in 1908, where J.P. Morgan and others, through deception, created runs on the banks and so forth. Now, folks, you've got to understand that in 1913, our money was still backed by gold and silver. It still had intrinsic value. We were circulating paper certificates. And the reason why, and we got into this, why it was a certificate, was because you could go to that bank and turn in that paper certificate for the bearer whatever it deemed, whether it was the ounce of gold or the ounce of silver. Today, as we have demonstrated, we don't even have money because we work for a Federal Reserve note. And if you remember when we took out that law dictionary, what was a note? An acknowledgement of debt. And then we took out the law dictionary again and we realized that money, in the legal term and lawful term of money, does not include instruments of debt. So what we have circulating for a medium of exchange in this country is an entity called legal tender. We also got into the fact, folks, how we discharge debts now. We don't pay them off. And think of it in a mathematical sense. Can two negatives create a positive? No. Two negatives always create a greater negative. 2 plus 2 is 4. Minus 2 and minus 2 is minus 4. It's really very simple. So this is the reason why on this show that we really hit home with this information, because this is where really where it's the apex of the problem, and it's the origination of the problem. Because the American people are used to looking at the television screen, and really, it's a dog and pony show, folks. It really is. You know? Like if I said the name to you, Barry Soetoro, does that mean anything to you? Well, it should. Because Barry Soetoro, you know, is Barack Hussein Obama, the President of the United States, of the insolvent corporation United States. Mr. Obama has numerous aliases. And you can find all this out. You go on the internet and you can look into his student loans, and you know, that's a show for another time, and we've already covered a lot of that. But you know, punch in the name Barry Soetoro and see what you come up with. I think you'll find it very interesting. So what we elect, as I said, you know, he's president of an insolvent corporation. So this is all we do, folks. We elect puppets to sit in positions of, we think, of choice and power, and all it is we elect officials to an insolvent corporation. Now, if I'm the insolvent corporation and you are the stockholders / voters out there, and behind me are the creditors / bankers who I have to keep in good relations with, because I want to maintain this corporation even though it's bankrupt and insolvent and has no intrinsic value to itself. I want to maintain my operations. So who am I really answering to, folks? Am I answering to you as this insolvent corporation, or am I answering to the creditors behind me who are keeping me afloat? Really very simple. And this is why all these crazy trade agreements come into play. Things like NAFTA and GATT. Folks, I have read NAFTA. It's quite lengthy, and the language is pure bureaucratic. But what you will get out of NAFTA is the following. We are financing our own demise. CAFTA, we are financing our own demise. And here's what happens, folks. Manufacturing-based countries, they get tax incentives to move overseas. Don't take my word for it. Look it up. It's true. We're financing our own demise as a people, as a nation, and as an entity of our economic system used to be a laissez-faire system. Why do you need thousands and thousands of pages of bureaucratic language to facilitate free trade? If it was free trade, folks, would we need thousands of pages of bureaucratic language to facilitate free trade? No. We would have free trade as we have had for centuries, since mankind, you know, started trading with wampum, with shells, to when mankind, you know, started crossing the oceans. Okay? This is where we are. The intrinsic value of your currency has been usurped from you. The power of representative government has been usurped from you. And I know the next one is going to really ring bells, especially if you haven't seen our show on this, but you bonded your children with an instrument called the birth certificate. The birth certificate, folks, let me back up a little bit. When the corporation that you know as the government went bankrupt, the bankers who created this crisis literally confiscated all the gold and silver, as we know they did in March 9th, 1933. We read the act verbatim here on this show. They liened the public trust. But what happened was it didn't settle the debt, the facade of debt. So what they did was they said, well, the only thing that we have left of any equity are United States federal citizens. If you watched the program, we were into the Lieber Codes, post-Civil War, Francis Lieber and so forth. We got into exactly with the Reconstructionist Acts. Okay, what did they reconstruct? They reconstructed our form of government, and really what they did was they flip-flopped our position of power. And what I mean by that is this. Prior to the Civil War, you were the sovereign. The American people were the sovereign. They held a superior position to the government. After the Reconstructionist Acts, folks, it was flip-flopped. Now we are in an inferior or servient position to the government. And you can't look at yourself in the mirror and think anything else. After all, they controlled every aspect of our lives. But what is the government? We have stated and demonstrated over and over that the government is an insolvent corporation. So who is controlling the mechanisms and the movements of this insolvent corporation that you know is the government that affects your daily lives detrimentally? That's where the American people have got to learn to look. They have got to stop looking at the dog and pony show that is presented in front of them and start looking up at the string holders of the puppets of the dog and pony show that we gullibly take in every day. We really think, folks, that we have choice. Let me tell you how it runs in this country, especially at the federal level. It runs like this. We have one party and two fractions of it. We have one party that has taken us down the road to a new world economic order, to use Gordon Brown's speech of just 3 days ago. And we have two fractions of that single party. You know them as the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. And as long as the Democrats and the Republicans are in power, it really doesn't matter to the people up here because they control both entities. And that's why, well, you know, let's look at Barry Soetoro, Barack Obama. Look at all his campaign speeches. He was going to have a transient government. He was going to put on the internet for 10 days any bill that came across his desk so the American people could know what's in the language of the bill. Folks, this last health care bill was printed 2,700 pages, and it was printed out 18 hours prior to the vote. Now, you tell me, can you study a document? And that's assuming that you have the 18 hours to do it. Can you study a document of bureaucratic language that is affecting everybody in North America, literally, not just the United States, and I'm going to get into that in a little bit. But can you really get a good understanding of that language in 18 hours of 2,700 pages of bureaucratic language? Absolutely not. Now, I know they have staff readers and all the rest of it that goes along with it. Boy, do I know. We pay an awful lot for that. But that's one bill. You know, all these different bills that, the Patriot Act, folks, 3/4 of the Congress people who voted on the Patriot Act have to this day never read it. And that bill was written prior to 9/11. Amazingly so, huh? Funny how that worked out. So you gotta understand today. I was going to get into some more legal stuff with you, and from listening to a couple of comments from the viewers, which we're very, very appreciative of, I think people just sort of wanted a generalized, not so technical version of where we are. And I look at my nation, folks, I was born in 1958. And when I think of from 1958 to 2010, where we have gone as a nation, where we have gone as a people, the state of our nation, the state of our medium of exchange, the money system, the state of the police power growing the way it has, the usurpation of our rights and representation through a supposed representative government, you must be concerned. You must be concerned. And if you're not concerned, then you're ignorant of what is going on around you. And folks, a lot of people are ignorant. One, a lot of people are ignorant because they wish to be. There is bliss in ignorance in some ways. And two, a lot of people are ignorant due to apathy. They're not involved. They're not researching. They're not getting up off the couch, writing letters, making phone calls, talking to people about the events that are going on. Now, if you take this health care bill that we were just talking about, I find it rather interesting that this was, I think, the 14th version of it. I find it interesting that 2,700 pages were written and the Congress had 18 hours to understand it, study it, and absorb it, and break it down. And then there was no back and forth banter or negotiation. It was yay or nay. And of course it was yay. But when you study that bill, now I have not read all 2,700 pages. I have read more than half of it. Let me tell you some highlights that I've recognized. And you may think that I'm stretching the truth here, but I am reading this verbatim, and you can go on the internet and you can look it up. First of all, one of the most shocking things that jumped out at me was the idea that we are now funding worldwide abortion. And let me tell you how the mechanics of our ways and means of the congressional funding goes. The reason why Barry Soetoro would not write the executive order to nullify the abortion clause, the reason why they kept that language in the bill and then he was going to write an executive order was because when a funding bill is passed, it is funded as it is written from the Ways and Means Committee, the congressional floor. Okay? So with this executive order, that's over here. The main bill is over here, and when it comes to broadcasting funds, this one over here is the one they're going to pay attention to because it is the language that was written and voted on through legislation. So congratulations. Your tax dollars are now going to kill millions of babies throughout the world. And that really, really, I believe is just something I don't even want to comment on a public show. Second of all, the funding clause of this bill also implements the funding for 16,000 new IRS agents. Now, think of this, guys and gals. We have demonstrated to you that the IRS is a collection agency of the private bank you know as the Federal Reserve. We have demonstrated this on this show without any doubt. We have read it from the origination of the act. We have read it from historical legislation. We have read it from the congressional record. So, we have read all this verbatim. So the IRS is a collection agency for a private bank that you know is the Federal Reserve. I want you to think about this. So this transfer of funds, folks, who is getting it? Who's collecting it? Who is now going to be enforcing this bill? That's right. The IRS is now involved in your health care. The IRS is in the health care business now, folks. Congratulations. And I will assure you that by 2014, when this act goes into implementation, there will be more than 16,000 new IRS agents. Also, with this bill, speaking of the taxing process, the taxes start in 2011. But the benefit to the supposed benefit to the people doesn't start until 2014. Interesting how that worked out also. Third of all, in this bill, all the confidentiality between you and your doctor is gone. Gone. Why? Because your doctor is going to be making reports to the Department of Health and other federal agencies on your health. And the reason why they're doing that is because there's going to be what some people in outside the mainstream media are calling death panels. Now you say, oh, that may be too strong of a word. Well, I don't think it is, and let me explain why. I'm just going to throw some numbers out to you. Let's say I am a 75-year-old male. I have some health conditions. Previous health history. Let's just go with, I have COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. I have like bronchitis, emphysema. And I have high blood pressure, okay? But I need something, another problem has come up in my life with regards to medical conditions and health, and I need, say, brain surgery. Well, if I'm 75 years old, I've got these two previous detrimental history qualifiers or dequalifiers. If I don't match this point scale, folks, I'm not even eligible for the brain surgery that I may need. I want you to think about that. Not only is your decisions and confidentiality taken away, but your choice is taken away. And your choice is taken away everything from vitamin C to brain surgery. Because if you want vitamin C, folks, you got to get a prescription. I am not making that up. All homeopathic, herbs, minerals, vitamins, anything you want to think of, homeopathic stuff, you have to get a prescription from a doctor who was registered by the AMA, the American Medical Association. Now I know you think that's part of the government. Nope, sorry. The AMA was founded by a Rockefeller Foundation, folks, to control medicine in the United States. And since then, medicine has gone straight downhill. Look at our cancer rates. Look at our. That's a show. That's a subject for another show. But I think we all know that our medicine is not only behind in times, but I think also it's very detrimental to the health of the American people. So you've lost your choice. You've lost your confidentiality. You got 16,000 new IRS agents to haunt you. You've got other people making decisions for you, whether you qualify for this test or this procedure. And for all this, you're going to be taxed even more than what you are today. Sounds like a wonderful deal to me. And you know, I can understand why the people in Congress exempted themselves from this whole bill. I wouldn't want that bill either. I wouldn't want that loose hanging over my head either. No, I wouldn't. So when you read the bill, folks, and I'm sure some of you will, and I'm thankful that you'll take the time to do it, read the exemption clause. You will find that every member of the federal government, Congress, and the executive branch are void, and cabinetry level positions are void of having to come under the implementation of this new health care bill. So who's some other people that are benefiting? Okay? They always say to us, well, you know, we got 32 million people who don't have health care. Folks, I'm in the medical field. And I can tell you one thing about this country, and I don't care what state you're in. You go to any hospital in the country, you will see a big sign. You cannot be turned down for medical treatment and or evaluation due to financial status. And then you may say, well, Tom, what happens if I need a $100,000 surgery? Well, folks, at least you still have the choice to say yay or nay right now. And if you don't have the insurance to do it, first of all, people that do have insurance are paying higher premiums for those who don't. And second of all, the people in the medical field and by law, and excuse me, the act slips my mind right now, but folks, you got a $100,000 medical bill, you can pay them $20 a month, and you're never going to get it paid off, but they cannot proceed against you. That's part of the acts that have some protections to the American people. It's true. So If you don't know your rights, obviously you don't have them. You know what? I think it was the Burton Act, but don't hold that to me. So this is what you got to understand. So the Congress exempts themselves from this terrible bill. You're going to be taxed even higher, 16,000 new IRS agents to do it. You lost your choice. You lost your confidentiality between you and your doctor. Your doctor actually has lost control because your doctor is going to get a yay or a nay from an outside entity for him to proceed and or to decline you. Very interesting. So who else is going to benefit here? Obviously the Congress is, because they're not part of it. You're not going to, because you're going to get choked with it. I'm going to tell you who's going to benefit. The non-producers and the illegal immigrants in the United States. When you read the language, you will see that there is funding that's going to be put aside for 12 million illegal immigrants coming into the United States. Now, folks, I'm sure by 2014 that number is going to be a lot higher than 12 million. It does make language right now for 32 million new subscribers to this program. And folks, when I say non-producers, I want you to understand I'm talking about people, there are people who do need help in life. And I don't think there's an American citizen out there that has a problem giving something to somebody who is in real need. But my problem comes into play, and I will just use an example. Like I said, I'm in the medical field, and recently I went to a call and at a ski resort, and this person fall down and go boom, and he's 28 years old. He seemed to be fine with me, but that's fine. We got to take our precautions. We package and we go. So I'm doing this paperwork we have to do, which is quite lengthy later on in the whole process after the patient is in the care of the doctor and nurses at the emergency room. And I noticed this fella is on Medicaid. Now, I'm thinking to myself, he's 28 years old. He's walking, talking. He's healthy enough to go ski boarding at a very high angle mountain, excuse me. Why is he not physically capable of working? Well, evidently he hired the right attorneys and got on the system. And you know, what was it that Jefferson said? A government that is big enough to give you everything is strong enough to take everything you have. And this is where we are. This is where we are right now. So, you know, the whole thing about the redistribution of wealth, folks, that came from the Communist Manifesto. And of course, LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, implemented that in 1964 with the war on poverty. We have another crisis here. We have all these people in poverty. We have to redistribute the wealth. What was the words he said? I think it was, we're going to give to the haves and take from the have-nots. Excuse me, vice versa. We're going to give to the have-nots and take from the haves. I'm sorry. Really interesting, because do you consider yourself one of the haves? I don't. But you're paying. And you're paying every day. And the burden of this process is getting deeper and deeper and deeper to the people who are producing, the people who are trying to better themselves, the people who are trying to better their family, provide for their family, and to better society. We just can't go on like that. And now you got this health care bill, where, and this isn't speculation on my point, folks. This is in the language of the bill. Okay? So what's going to happen with them illegal immigrants? I can guarantee you by the time this is implemented, they're going to be gain citizenship. Really interesting. I hope, folks, at this show, I wanted to just talk to you. I was hoping, because I do have some things I was going to go over with you, and maybe I'll get into that, but I just wanted to talk to you, to see, you know, I know a lot of you haven't watched our first 25 shows, and I'm very grateful. I know a lot of you have, because I really appreciate the comments and the questions that we've been getting. And I'm really appreciative the fact that you folks, number one, are standing there watching me, but number two, really absorbing the information. And I think that if the American people, if this information is more provided to them, they're going to have, number one, they're going to have to go looking for it, because it's not going to be served to them on a plate. Because the real controllers don't want you to have the information that we're providing to you. As a matter of fact, they operate through deception. And that's exactly where we are. So, when you start thinking about some other wealth distribution programs, let's look at Social Security. Social Security sounds like a wonderful idea. Everybody's going to have a nice little retirement package put away for them. See, this is what everyone thinks about Social Security. Everybody thinks that, okay, I'm going to start. I started paying the Social Security when I was 14 years old. So, okay, see, Uncle Sam, they're a benevolent organization. They're looking out for me. They're going to take this fund and they're going to put it in a little kitty for Tom D'Ambra because they care about me. Absolutely. They're looking out for my well-being. So what happens? Really, what happens? Social Security, folks, is a pay-as-you-go system. Okay? And what I mean by that is this. They take the money, they put it into a big pile, and they cut whatever liabilities they have for that month. Okay, here's our liability pile over here. Then they take the rest of this pile, and they put it over here. That goes into the general budget, so they can spend it. There's no money being put aside for you. Zero. They're robbing you in another manner. Okay? Now, if we remember, Social Security at one time was voluntary. Got a Social Security number? Not voluntary anymore. Okay? In the beginning, the participants paid 1% of up to $1,400. Now we pay 7.65% of all of it. You're working all year for it. So, again, are they telling you this? No. And also, when you every once in a while in the mail, you get these little statements from Social Security. Read the fine print, folks. It's all projections. There's no money there. I forget, it might have been the Grace Commission back in 1983 that spoke of the hundreds of millions of dollars of IOUs that were in the Social Security. In other words, we're robbing it. Okay, we owe you. Well, folks, who's going to wind up owing? You are. You're going to wind up owing. This year, and they just announced this 4 days ago, is the first year that Social Security is not going to take in as much money as it's going to pay out. They did not estimate this to happen until 2026. It's 2010. Folks, ask yourselves, what happened to all that money that all them people put in for all that time? Where'd it go? Okay? And not to mention, in 1933 and 36, we still had some intrinsic value to our money. Some. We still had purchasing power to our money. You could buy a candy bar for a nickel. Now you need $1.50 to get a candy bar. You could buy a house for $3,000. Now you need $300,000 to buy the same house. Why? Because of the devaluation of our currency. The more they print of it, the more they make it more useless, which it just has no intrinsic value. It's fiat, the more worthless it becomes. Now, in one of the previous shows, we got into the mechanics of our money system, the banking system itself. And we demonstrated to you quite plainly from Alan Greenspan that we were on a 2% fractional banking system. And we explained what that meant. Basically, it's like this, folks. For every dollar of liability that your bank has out in loans and so forth, okay, there's only 2 cents backing it up. 2 cents. So they got $1 of liability, they've got 2 cents of asset. At least they did until 4 days ago. Because Ben Bernanke announced 4 days ago that we are now on a 0% fractional banking system. There is not even 2 cents to back up every dollar of liability anymore. 4 days ago. Go on the internet, punch in Ben Bernanke, 0 fractional banking system. It'll pop up on you. And folks, this isn't wacko news. This was the BBC, this was the New York Times, this was the Wall Street Journal, this was the Washington Post, this was the European Union Times. This is the news you're getting your information from. And they're telling you, not only do you have no intrinsic value in your currency, Not only are you bonded to these very same people and your children, not only are you laboring in an unbelievable tax system, and now there's no asset backing up your bank that's creating these liabilities. There's nothing backing it up, folks. And one country that really comes to my mind that this happened to was 1936, Germany. When I read this article, of course it was the same people that did it to Germany that's doing it today in the United States. When I read this article, I was really struck at what this means to our money system, or should I say, our lack of a money system. Folks, I want you to think about that. We are at a 0% fractional banking system. There is nothing backing up our money. It's debt. It's a debt instrument. As we have demonstrated on this show, we have both the signatures. Secretary of the Treasury, you remember that show about the Secretary of the Treasury, who the Secretary of the Treasury really was? We assume it's the United States. Oh my God, we discovered it wasn't. So this is where we are, folks. And I know I haven't got technical. I'm just having a conversation with you. This is where we are. The Social Security system that you've put into all these years is broke. It's been robbed. The money system has no intrinsic value. It's completely fiat. We're on a 0% fractional banking system. Our military is in 136 different countries throughout the world. We have bombed and or invaded 49 countries since 1940. Where are we as a nation? Is this where all the sacrifice was made from all the veterans from the founding period on, the people who really thought they were fighting for the liberty of future generations? Is this what all the bloodshed was for and about? I know not. I know not. And we have got to learn again to get by the dog and pony show that is presented to us. Because again, folks, we have one party, and it's a global world economic order, again, to use Gordon Brown's statement just the other day. But we have two fractions of that party, and you know them as the Republican and or Democratic Party. Now, with that being said, I'd like to qualify something. I do believe on a local level that we still can take our nation back. Now, this will be the first time on this show that we've speculated about something, because we have done nothing but read verbatim everything to you. But I believe we can take it back, but it has to be at a grassroots local level. It has to start with the states electing the proper representatives to get back to get the federal government back to the borders and boundaries which it was intended to be kept in. The 10th Amendment, very interesting amendment. Please take the time to read it. But see, folks, everyone thinks that the Constitution and the Bill of Rights is giving you rights. Not at all. That's the farthest thing from the truth. Read the document. Read the authors. Read the people, why and what they did. The congressional conventions, the federal, all the different acts with regards to, different things you could read, from the founding era. You have to go back to the foundation. See, that's what they've taken away from us in the public school system. Folks, what did Texas just announce last week? All right? Texas announced last week they will no longer teach or have Thomas Jefferson or George Washington in any of their public school textbooks. I'm not making this up. Look it up yourself. They have taken, if you don't have a foundation, they can manipulate language, they can manipulate the meaning of anything the way they deem necessary to their desires, because you do not have a foundation. You do not understand that the Bill of Rights is not telling you what your rights are. The Bill of Rights is telling the federal government what they cannot do, what they cannot encroach on, what they cannot touch. That's what the Bill of Rights is telling. The Bill of Rights is a declaration to the government that they created. Here's where you'll stay. Here's where you shall not encroach. That's what we have to get back to. We have to get back to a sound money system. We have to understand our history, our laws. We have to understand our courts are controlled by a foreign guild. We got into that in one show. The bar, British Accreditation Registry. And this was why attorneys are called esquires, a title of nobility in English law. This is why. Take the time to look and see what's in front of you and ask the prevalent questions. And from the answers, I will tell you one thing. It'll bring you down the road to more questions. And you may not like all the answers that's going to be presented in front of you. Folks, this takes courage to do this. We're so apathetic. It's like we don't care anymore. We better start caring. We better start caring. We do not have a lot of time left. I am a student of history. Even from third grade on, history has always fascinated me. And I am telling you, the time is short. Think of how ignorant we are as a people. We bond our children with the birth certificate. Does any mother take the time to read that language? And don't tell me you have to sign it. You don't have to sign it. Show me the law. Ask them, can you show me the law that mandates I have to sign this? Folks, it does not exist. Show me the law that says I got to vaccinate my children in the public law system. It does not exist. It is mere policy. And let's talk about the vaccinations. My God, SV40. You know, go on the internet, punch in SV40 and vaccinations, you'll be shocked. Mercury, thrombosolite, all these things are in the vaccinations, and we're wondering where autism comes from. Folks, when I was a child, I never heard of the word autism. I came from a very densely populated area, one of the most per capita densely populated areas in the entire United States. I did not know one child that had autism. Think of the food we're eating and the control. Go on the internet and punch in Codex Alimentarius. You'll be shocked. And then think companies like Monsanto and others will start jumping out at you, how they're controlling your food, the GMOs, and all that. So, this web is intertwining. But when you look outside the web, folks, it's the same spider weaving that web. And that's where we have to get to turn this around. Now, for time's sake, we have to get going. But I want to say to you, this was the first show that we did not sit here, anyone who's watched the show, with law books and more documentation and legislation from certified sources. And we have presented these sources in threefold to you, as we've stated, on everything that we have demonstrated to you. So you have to sit back and you have to look at the information that we have presented to you, because there's a ton of it more, folks. And we are going to go on with your cooperation in this process of both of us learning about what's going on with our nation and the world for that matter. But you cannot just say the information that this show was presented to you is a bunch of wacko news. You just can't do that because of the way we have presented this, and history and legislation and documentation speak for themselves. So the point comes now, what are we going to do with this new knowledge? Are we going to continue the quest of knowledge? As I have said on this show numerous times, education is our best ammo. Folks, the last thing the powers to be want, they want, the last thing that they want, the premier thing that they are afraid of is an educated electorate. What was it that Hitler said? It is well for the leaders of nations that people do not think. I think that sums that up rather well. Folks, with that all being said, I want to thank you very, very much for listening to my rant today. I am very, very appreciative that you take the time with us. I do ask you to go back and go to www.katv.org and look at our past shows. This is our 26th show. and you can go back and review our shows and look at the information that we've presented. I think if you haven't seen the shows, you'll find it very, very interesting. And also in the future shows, folks, there are some historical events that are coming up, particularly in the month of April. April 19th, 1993 was a very devastating day for this nation because this will be the anniversary of an event that took place in Waco, Texas against a church, not a compound group, called the Branch Davidians. With that being in mind, and to honor the people that were murdered there, and I did say murder, we are going to be presenting in the next 3 or 4 shows some information on that event. And we're going to be running 2 documentaries for you. I think you'll find them very, very interesting. And then next week, folks, I'm hoping to have my personal study done on this new health care bill. And it is my hopes that I will be making a presentation to you of our findings. I know we covered some of it broadly today, 16,000 new IRS agents and the rest of it. I think it's fascinating that the IRS is now in the healthcare business. So, folks, again, they don't let you read the language. The people who vote on it don't read the language. And then they go and they exempt themselves from it. I think that says enough right there. As always, we are very, very thankful that you take the time from your busy day to watch this program. We thank you for watching. And as always, we remind you that your government is your responsibility. Thank you for watching.